So this is going to be Gabriel. Anybody?
11.
11 already?
hmm
All right.
When did you wear the beeper?
So I wore the beeper last night and also this morning. So this
Okay.
morning for two beeps, last night for three. So I had five beeps in total.
You said this morning was 2, correct?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. And
So,
any questions, problems?
No problems, no.
Okay.
so I'd say we ought to start with beeps from today.
Beep. Okay, I'll do the most
Beep,
recent beep
beep,
then first.
yeah. So just go backwards, I guess we could just go
Okay, sounds
backwards.
good.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Okay. So for
And
context,
Amber, you want to go first?
I'll go second.
Sorry?
Second. That's
Five,
how
four,
we've been
five.
doing it. So
Me,
the
you,
same. Yeah.
Cody? You, Cody? Okay.
Yeah. I'll keep the same order.
All right. We're ready then.
okay, got it. So for context, um, I was reading a text message bubble, and in my experience at that moment was the word bleeding. And that was auditorially in my experience in my inner voice, my internal speaking voice. And it was experienced as the reading of the word bleeding in conjunction with my internal speaking voice saying it. At the same time, there was the image of in my sort of imagination, so not in the real world, an image of a general or a kind of just a glob of blood that was flowing down. And it was kind of a shiny blood, like a red kind of shiny uh, liquid that was flowing down. Not anything in particular. There was a blue background. It wasn't on anything. It was just that.
And
And
is
that is everything.
is the seeing or the word more in your experience than the other, or are they both the same?
I would say the auditory experience of the word is most in my experience.
60-40, 90-10.
I'd say somewhere close to 80-20.
Okay. Then let's start with the word. So I understood you to be saying that you are innerly speaking the word bleeding
hmm
in the voice that you've described before.
Yes.
And is is it the same voice that you've described before, as far as I know, which I guess I remember as being sort of raspy, toneless, whispery, something?
Uh, in this instance, I don't really remember what if it exactly was that part. I assume it was, but I did not take note of that. And I think the reason I didn't take note of it was because I just assumed it was that voice. But now that I think about it, I'm not sure
Okay,
if it
fair
was
enough.
that particular voice.
But it was that particular word.
It was that particular word.
And was that word part of a sentence that you were speaking and reading, or does it seem like it's just this one word that you have isolated out at this moment?
It was part of the sentence. However, in that particular moment, I was just thinking about that one word.
Okay.
And that's not to say that I was reading a sentence and that word popped out at me. In that moment, I was just looking at that word.
So the distinction here that I think is interesting or important or whatever is, does it seem like like there's a stream of words going by and the beep happens to catch me at this one? Or does it seem like I'm reading this word and then I'm reading this word and then I'm reading this word, sort of as separate words like sausages on a link or link sausage?
It's neither of those two, I would say. It's that I wasn't in the process of reading a sentence. I was just looking at that word. So it was like I was just looking at that word on my phone. It was in a sentence, but I wasn't in the process of reading a sentence.
Uh-huh. So you're speaking the word and seeing the word. I guess I should say that the other way around. I'm seeing the word and speaking the word, and the word on the screen is part of a sentence, but I'm not in the midst of that sentence. I'm just looking at.
Yeah, I'm not in the midst of the sentence.
And does the word have any meaning to me? Is this a semantically meaningful piece of information here? I'm interested in bleeding, and so I'm interested. So I'm saying bleeding, or is this just sort of a random
Uh,
semantic free utterance?
I would say it does have meaning.
Okay. So I am looking at the word bleeding, which I understand means blood stuff,
Hmm.
and I'm saying bleeding, which I understand means blood stuff, but I'm not trying to say that there's some separate thinking that goes around, well, that's blood stuff or whatever, but that I understand that as a reference to red stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. But not as part of a sentence. I don't understand it as part of a sentence. It is part of a sentence, but that is not how.
Right, exactly.
Got it. Anybody else have any questions about that? And then I see red stuff, which
Yes.
I understand to be blood on a blue background.
I understand. It happens to be in my imagination. Um, there's some sort of kind of bluish background. Um,
But that's not essential to your.
that's not essential, no.
You broke up, so I want to make sure I understood what you said. I see it as blood. I don't see it as a red liquid. I see it as blood.
I see it as blood.
You broke up again. Must be.
Oh, shoot. I do see it as blood.
Okay, good. And is it in motion? I see it running down, or did I just see a glob of blood?
Uh, it, okay, so it's formed as though it was in motion. Like the shape of it indicates that it is dripping, but it is not actually in motion in my experience. It's sort of frozen in time.
Okay. So this is like a still picture, still seeing of blood,
Yes.
but the blood itself is in motion. And I
The
can
blood
put.
itself is it's a still seeing of blood that all I can say is that it's formed as though it was in motion.
Okay. So I see it as blood. I don't see it as dripping blood.
Yeah. I see it as blood that takes the shape of drips. So it's a purely geometrical thing that I'm saying.
So if so, does that mean I see it as blood, and whether it's moving or not just doesn't matter to me? The fact of what I'm seeing happens to be shaped like a drip, but it's not like I'm seeing a drip. I'm seeing blood, and it sort of
Yeah.
inconsequentially happens to be drip shaped.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's red. And is it the redness that grabs my attention, or is it just this? I'm illustrating this blood for myself.
Um, the redness does not particularly grab my attention. Um, I would say it's more the second thing, which is that, yeah, this is just simply me illustrating blood.
And and it's on a bluish black background. Does that background disappear, or it's like a frame with the blood drip in it, or
Uh, so the background, it does disappear out into, the board, whatever borders it has, it does disappear out into whatever those are, you know, some undefined thing. Uh, I will say it's not like a solid blue background. It's like a background it's really, what I mean by background is this is actually, it's like a room, but it's like blurry and out of focus. And it just happens to be in a bluish light, kind of like there's light streaming in from a window on a cloudy day. Um, that's what the blue is. It's the blue of a cloudy day's light streaming through a window and sort of dimly illuminating an out of focus room.
okay? So does that mean I see blood in a room, or do I see blood? And then when you asking me about what the background is like, I can say, well, it sort of looks like a room.
I would say I see blood in a room.
Okay.
In my experience, it does have a location within this room.
And in the middle of the room, suspended in the room, and inside
I don't know if it's in the middle of the room or not, because I don't know it's behind me. So I don't know if it constitutes the middle.
and suspended in the room, like in the middle of the
Yes,
room,
it's
or
suspended. It's levitating.
not sitting on a table or whatever. Okay.
Yes, not sitting on a table.
Okay. I don't think I'm good.
Me too.
Number two.
I hope nobody
I
here
mean, number four.
faints at blood because that might have been an uncomfortable conversation.
Oh, could I ask one more question about that, about the innocent?
About the what?
So about what you saw in your
Okay.
experience in the so I understood you to be saying that there were these qualities to the room, like the bluish lighting and all of that stuff. Are
Mhm.
is that what you're seeing at the moment of the beep, or is that part of your experience at the moment of the beep? I just want to clarify.
It's part of my experience, but I think to use the language that we've used in the past, it's not thematic. It just so happens to be part of the visual experience, but I'm not making a deal out of it.
Okay,
Okay.
then I am good, and we can go on to beep four.
Okay. Beep number 4. So for context, I was in class and my professor was writing on the whiteboard and giving a lecture. So at the moment of the beep, in my experience, was the reading of the two words "some woman," and also so visually they were there in my experience as the experience of looking at them on the whiteboard, and also auditorially as the experience uh, of my professor having just said them. So not having read them, not me reading them in my internal voice, but rather the voice of my professor.
And what is it that the auditory, what was it again
Some
that
woman
you okay.
it was written on the whiteboard. And uh, additionally, there was a visual aspect of this experience, which
Mhm.
was it was this sort of image of a kind of like marble block, maybe ivory block, uh, that's dripping in honey. Like honey is kind of glazed over it, and there's like gold dust sprinkled inside of there. And somehow this image carries with it a sense of motherhood, or the concept of motherhood. And to me, I experienced this image as the ambiguous woman, which was a concept we were discussing, the ambiguous something. In this case,
Okay,
the
and
ambiguous woman.
okay, and of these aspects, is there anything that's more prominent, or are they all the
Um,
same?
the image was the most prominent in this case,
Okay, and how
and
much more prominent would you say?
I would say like 60-40.
Okay, so like 60, and then the other things are 40. right?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, so let's start with the image. So could you tell me again what it is that you see?
So there is a block of, I think it's ivory, and it's sort of chopped off and ragged at the top, but the sides of it and the bottom are uniform. It's like a cube, it that's chipped at the top, and it's it's kind of just and
We're having trouble with your audio, Gabriel.
old dust. I did.
We're still having trouble.
Is
We can't hear you.
anyone there?
Or I can't hear you anyway. It's
Yeah, it's the same on
Oh
my
boy,
end too. You
shoot.
maybe Gabriel, what you can try to do is to turn off your camera, and that way see if the audio will, sometimes that helps to boost the audio a bit. I don't know if anyone else had other ideas.
I think that's worth a shot.
Yeah.
So you're frozen audio and visual on our screen at this moment, Gabriel.
Hello?
Now we can see you. So
Okay.
if
I
you
like that?
Yeah, that works better.
let's try that and
Okay.
see what that.
I've also switched to a hotspot instead of Wi-Fi because oftentimes that does better.
Okay.
Okay.
It
Well,
seems like you're
you want to put
stable
your
now.
camera back on and see whether that works. And
Sure. And tell me if it doesn't, and then I'll turn it back off.
so it looks good. So Amber had asked you something like, "Tell me what you see about this block," and then we
Mhm.
lost.
Okay. So I see a cube or a cube of ivory, and the ivory is chipped at the top. Um, and it's also uh, sort of drizzled in a blanket of honey. And inside of the honey is gold dust sprinkled through it, so the honey kind of is glittery. And there's a black background. Oh, and they're also in the top left is a light source. I think it's like a sun.
Do you see a sun, or is it just a light source? Like in my
I I see I think I see a sun, but at the very least it is a very sun-like light source, which is a big ball of that's kind of yellowish and shiny,
Okay.
bright. Okay.
And then you had also mentioned that there was a this sense of motherhood or this ambiguous woman. Could you tell me more about that?
Oh, so I mean, those are kind of two different things. So this
Okay.
image and the sense of motherhood combined, I am experiencing this whole thing as the concept of the ambiguous woman. Attached
Okay.
to the image is this sense of motherhood,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is somewhat difficult to define, uh, to explain. Um, but there is sort of like it is specifically sort of an affectionate. There's like a sense of affection, and um, yes, there's a sense of affection for a child uh, coming from a woman.
And I know you were saying it was difficult for you to describe the sense, and you but is there anything more to be said about how that is present to you, or how that's attached to the image, or if those that doesn't make that question doesn't
I
make any
guess there
sense?
is more to be said about it. which is that it is kind of comforting. Like it's a kind of nice thought. Um, it's not stressful at all. And there's also connected to it some sort of smell as well, which is sort of a vanilla-y smell.
And maybe you broke up, or when you say connected to it, you mean connected to this marble honey glazed
I
image?
would say no, I would say this is specifically connected to the sense of motherhood. And I guess by extension, it's connected to the marble honey glazed thing.
So then I've lost something of a fundamental. Maybe Amber can ask about it, or you want me to ask about it, Amber?
You could ask about it just so that, yeah, go ahead.
So so the cube is motherhood, and then there's a concept that I'm not exactly sure what the concept is. The concept is the ambiguous woman is
No, the cube and everything in there is the ambiguous woman. The concept of motherhood is part of the experience of the cube, and the cube and the concept of motherhood together makes the ambiguous woman.
would you say that one more time? Because
Okay, okay, I will. So we got the cube,
got it.
and we also have the sense of motherhood, which includes this like vanilla-y smell. These two things together make the ambiguous woman.
Okay.
So I experience these two things together as a whole as the ambiguous woman.
And at the moment of the beep, are you experiencing those together, or are you experiencing them as the cube here? And
I'm experiencing them together.
okay. Okay.
Do you have any more questions about the chat? Because I'm good. We're good? Okay. And then there was the other 40% of this experience. Could you tell me again what that was?
That was uh the words on the board and my professor saying them. So
Okay.
I just read Some Woman and instead of my voice sort of being the voice in my head when I read the words, it was the professor's voice because he had just said those words. So it was kind of like I looked at the words and I didn't need my internal voice. It didn't go off. I just had the professor's words still in my head. So I was looking at the words "some woman" visually, they were there, and also the auditory experience of my professor having said them.
Okay. So is this a seeing and hearing deal externally, or is there anything, or is this like a hearing? I'm hearing this in
Okay.
my inner voice, or I don't know if that makes
I
sense.
so it was I said that it was like the voice of my professor is was echoing. So there's a sense in which it was internal, which is that at that moment he was not saying those words. He had just said them, but they were still auditorially being experienced. Uh, so I guess it's a combination, maybe, I would say. Um, and the seeing is entirely external. I'm looking at them on the board.
Okay. So I'm trying. Oh, okay. So I'm just trying to get this professor's voice. So is it that I'm hearing like an echo of what my professor just said, or I'm reading it in my professor's voice, or something else? I'm trying to get a grasp of what that experience was like for you.
Okay, so it's like I'm hearing what my professor said. It's not I'm hearing what my professor is saying. It's I'm hearing what my professor just said.
Got it. Okay.
So I'm seeing on the board in real time, and I'm hearing my professor delayed by a second or a few seconds or whatever.
Something like that, yes.
And does it seem like I'm hearing my professor read what's on the board, or does it seem like I'm hearing my professor as he had said it a little bit ago, more or
It
less?
seems like I am hearing my professor as he had said it a little bit ago.
And as he had said it, did he say some woman?
Yes.
Any more questions?
I think I will comment. It's when I said delay, or when you said delay, I agreed to that, but I don't know if I would use the word delay because it's not like I felt like I'm only finally now hearing him. Because in my opinion, that's sort of what delay seems like. It's like, oh, I should have heard him. Now I finally am. It's like I did hear him. I'm just continuing to hear him.
Still hearing him.
Yes.
Any more questions?
And
Anything else?
and is he talking about the concept of, I forget what you called it, generalized woman?
The ambiguous woman.
The
Yeah.
ambiguous woman. So that's his subject matter. He's
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah, that's what we're going. That's what we were going over.
Okay. No, I think I'm good.
Me too.
Number 3.
Okay, beat number 3. Oh, that's on my phone. Let me turn that on. So, okay, beep number 3. So, for context, I was getting ready for bed last night, and I was recalling a conversation that I had had with a professor of mine. So, in uh, in my experience at the moment of the beep, what was the word uh, auditorially Chalmers with a question mark. So it was like Chalmers. Um, that was, and it was experienced as part of a sentence. So the meaning of the sentence was also in my experience. It's just that that last word was all that was in my experience auditorially. But the meaning of the sentence, which was in my experience, was a question. It was, you know Chalmers? Question mark. And also with the word Chalmers, there was sort of a surprised tone to it. Additionally, in my experience, were um, the words auditorially electromagnetic radiation. Um, and that is because, for context, I was watching a video at that moment, or there was a video playing in the background, and those words just came up in the video. And visually, I was imagining in my an internal seeing, there was the image of a black um, like a black piece of charcoal, or like just a sort of black outline of a shape, just a black shape, and it was experienced as a black body with radiation coming off of it. So there was also visually like arrows coming off of it to indicate radiation.
Okay. And any one of these things more prominent at the moment?
The question was most prominent.
And you had said a little while ago you described this as being auditorily present. And so how does that
So
go?
yes. The last word of the question was auditorially present, which was Chalmers question mark. Um, the um, the rest of the sentence was present semantically in meaning, but not in text or audio or anything like that.
And so is there a particular voice to this? I understand there's some
Yes.
tone, but like,
Yes. So this was me remembering my voice in the past, and so it was my voice.
and when you say your voice, is that is it sort of like I'm remembering a time when I had said this out loud and sort of what that sounded like? Or
Yes.
in my inner voice, the raspy, whispery voice?
It was my external voice, my actual real life speaking voice.
And you had said the so this word Chalmers question mark is part of a longer sentence, and the longer sentence, it's not like at the moment of the beep it catches the whole sentence. It's just this word.
It's just that word auditorially, but semantically it catches the whole sentence.
And that's sort of two separate things.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I may have missed something in the beginning here, so because I got distracted by something else on my computer. Sorry about that. But is the point here that I'm recalling a conversation that I had with somebody else where I was saying to that somebody else, you know Chalmers?
Yes.
And at the moment of the beep, what I hear is Chalmers, but I know that to be the whole sentence, you know Chalmers.
Yes. I know. So auditorially, I hear Chalmers at the moment of the beep, but that word Chalmers, uh, the meaning of the whole sentence is present to me as well.
Okay. So is it your sense that if the beep had come a second before, you would have heard maybe the you know portion of this? Is that so? What I'm trying to get at is your impression that the word Chalmers is there and that's all that's there, with the implication that it carries you know Chalmers, or does it seem like you have heard you know Chalmers and the beep happens to get you at the end of it? Or maybe you can't make that distinction. I'm not.
I would say so the second the latter option um was that I heard the whole sentence. I Okay. I'm not sure I understand the distinction.
So let me ask a more basic question, then I'll ask that question.
Okay.
So I understand that I'm rehearing my voice. I'm hearing what had been said in that conversation. I'm not speaking it again. I'm hearing it.
Hmm.
And so what I want to know is whether if we expand away from the moment, maybe is a way to ask it. I heard my voice say, "You know Chalmers," which is what I said back in the real time. But at the moment, at, in this broadly defined moment, I'm saying, "You know Chalmers," or do I just hear the word Chalmers and the rest of that stuff isn't there auditorially?
Oh, okay.
I just know what this means.
Okay, I see. So yes, you know was there auditorially a moment before.
Okay.
And I will say, although I am remembering this conversation, it still does feel like I'm producing the words in this remembering.
And by producing, do you mean producing in a hearing kind of a way? Or do you mean I am saying those words again?
It means I'm speaking them again, like I'm reciting basically.
So this is the experience is more of innerly speaking than it is of inner hearing, even though this refers to an event that's happened whenever it happened.
Yes.
Okay. So it's as if you are recreating the speaking of that, not recreating the hearing of that.
Yes.
And I want to make abundantly clear, I don't care one way or the other. I just like to know which it is. It's all right with me if you were hearing it. It's all right with me if you were speaking it. I just want to clarify the.
Yes. I understand. Yeah, it's definitely speaking.
Okay. And then there was the electromagnetic radiation, right? And is that coming from the video? Is that correct?
Yes.
This is like externally coming over the speakers or whatever.
Yeah. Yes.
And that is directly in my experience at the moment, not just the fact that this video was playing and that's what was being said.
Yeah, that was in my experience.
Yeah. And is there anything really more to say about how that's present?
Well, I mean, it is directly connected to the image. So I think that's the more to say.
And is that to say that sort of like in my experience, there's sort of one chunk of my experience is the whole deal with the previously spoken sentence, right? Chalmers thing, and the other chunk is this electromagnetic radiation bit, or sort of like three chunks. There's the inner speaking deal, hearing electromagnetic radiation, and then this thing I'm seeing in my imagination.
Right. Okay. I would divide it into two.
Okay. So the heard electromagnetic radiation and the image in my imagination both kind of go together. Those are sort of one bit. And so of the what I'm seeing, could you say again how that goes?
Right. So I'm seeing a black object, and there's just this sort of pure black object, with nothing to it except the outline, because it's a purely black object, so it doesn't have any details. And then there are like arrows coming off of it, pointed, upward into the right, and those represent, and so the black object represents a black body in the sense of black body radiation, and the arrows represent the radiation.
2 arrows, 10 arrows, 100 arrows?
It's like around 6 arrows.
Okay.
And are the arrows in any particular, is this thing black and those are black arrows too, or is there a color to the arrows? Or
Oh, the arrows are orange.
and you had said basically what these stand for is like the black object stands for black body radiation and the arrows represent the radiation coming off of that. Is that stuff where it's like, to explain this to these guys I have to say that so it's clear, and at the moment it was just this object and the arrows? Or
At the moment, I was experiencing the black object as a black body and the arrows as radiation.
sort of seeing with understanding? It's not like I'm just seeing a abstract shape or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
And is there anything else to be said about this seeing? Like, I know in the past one there was the deal with it being sort of in a room, or the background was somehow salient. Is there anything like that?
There is. There is. It's on this black object is on the ground, and it's on the ground outside. So there's some, I think it's on dirt, like a dirt ground. And then there is a blue sky behind it with some white clouds.
And I'm sorry, we did say you had said that the Chalmers deal was more present than the electromagnetic radiation deal
Yeah.
by about 5149 stronger, 99.1 stronger.
Um, I think it's pretty close. So it's probably like 60-40.
Okay. And I think I'm good. Anyone else has any other questions?
I'm pretty good with one question. Are the arrows in motion? Is this
They're not in motion.
okay?
Could you also spell? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you, could you spell Chalmers for me?
Yes, Chalmers.
Okay.
And you described the background with pretty much detail, dirt and blue sky and clouds or whatever. Was that present? So this work is always subject to the fly on the wall skeptic who says, well, he's making up that image. He didn't say anything about sky and ground or whatever at the beginning when he said there was a black body. Now he's saying that he's probably making it up as it goes along. Do you have a sense of what I should say to a skeptic like that?
I'm sorry, what was that? What's the question?
So my question is sort of double a question. Do you think that the sky and the ground were there at the present of the BP? You just didn't say about it for one reason or another? Or is it possible that you're making that kind of stuff up as the
What I know for a fact is that at the beginning of me giving you this information, I know that I was thinking about whether or not to mention the sky and the ground, but I just hadn't gotten to it yet.
Okay.
So before I didn't make it up just then. But I guess I could say it's possible that I made it up before then.
Right. Or it could be that you're making it up then, but including the details of making it up then are that you had thought about it making it up before.
Right. Yeah,
So,
I guess that's
so
of course true as well.
I don't think there's any possible way to confidently get out of that.
Yeah, I suppose. It's last Thursdayism.
Yeah, it's a brain in the vat kind of a thing from my point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, could be. I doubt it. Could be.
Right. Yeah.
Number two.
Okay, number two. So this is a similar thing as the last one where there was a sentence and I was actually hearing this on a video. But there was a sentence and two words of the sentence were auditorially present, but the meaning of the sentence was semantically present. So the semantic meaning of the sentence, actually, it wasn't a full sentence that was semantically present, but the semantic meaning that was present to me was the following phrase: because a steak is definitionally blank. And what was auditorially present to me were the words is definitionally. There was also a visual element here. There was the image of a steak with a ring of fat around it. And I was also wondering if the person who was speaking, which was a cook, I was wondering if the cook uh, was going to claim that the chef he was speaking of. I feel like I need to give more context now that I think about it. So I'm going to give a little more context. Yeah, okay. So I was watching a video. There was a cook, and he was talking about another cook.
So let's give these guys names. So Abel was talking about Baker or somebody. I don't care.
Okay, I got it. All right. So there's a cook named Adam.
Okay.
Adam was talking about another chef Marco Pierre White. And Marco Pierre White, this is all context. Marco Pierre White had just said something like, he knows a good steak by how much fat is around it, because that tells you what's inside it. Adam was in the midst of sort of mocking that claim while debunking it. And that mocking slash debunking sentence was the one that was interrupted by the beep.
Okay.
Okay. So auditory so the sentence was, because a steak is definitionally and the beep in my experience happened on the words is definitionally.
So do I understand that to mean that Adam is saying this on a video?
Yes, the full sentence was, because a steak is definitionally a muscle. And the beep happened as I experienced it before a muscle.
Okay.
So,
but your experience is of Adam saying that.
yes. Well, my experience is of Adam saying semantically, because a steak is definitionally, and my experience is of Adam auditorially saying is definitionally.
And do you hear that? I have two questions about that. One is, does that seem like it's in sync with what's actually out there vibrating in the room? So I'm hearing Adam saying that, not I am hearing it after a delay or whatever. One of our beeps had a delay, and
Right. Yes. It is what he actually said. It's like at the time he's saying it. Yeah.
Okay. And so do you? And then I've got the question that I've asked before. Do you hear just the chunk is definitionally, or do you hear sort of the whole thing, and the beep happens as at and is definitionally?
Well, I had heard the previous bit of the sentence. So if the beep had come during the previous bit, like because of steak, I would have probably auditorially had because of steak. But in this moment, all that was auditorially present to me was is definitionally.
So what I hear you saying, and I want to know whether this is true. I'm just, we're translating it for each other and from English into English here, basically.
Right.
What I hear you saying is that I hear these words sort of a chunk at a time. I don't hear a flow of words, which are punctured, happens to be in the vicinity of is definitely. But I hear a chunk, and then I hear another chunk, and then I hear another chunk, and the chunk that I'm happen to be hearing right now is definitionally.
Yes.
Is that correct?
It is correct that that's at least how it felt at the beep.
That's all we're talking about. That's
okay.
exactly what we're talking about. What's actually happening in your neurons or whatever, don't know anything about that.
Okay, got it. But what I'm contrasting that with is the fact that I don't feel like that when I'm talking with people normally. But of course, that doesn't actually, that's not the question. So I understand.
Well, that's what makes this work really sort of interesting, because it's fairly common when people will say, the beep always catches me doing this kind of thing, and I know I never do that in real life.
Mm-hmm.
The beep's random. I'm not aiming at special kinds of things. So I think there's room for people to be fairly mistaken about their own everyday inner experience. And I'm not saying you are. What I'm really saying is, let's bracket that. We're going, and I think you're doing a good job of it. We're going one beep at a time, whether or not that is typical or atypical of what.
Yes, I understand, and I agree. I definitely could be wrong. Part of me, like, about what's normally in my experience, but also part of me definitely wonders if maybe there's, we discussed this before, some sort of chunkification going on, which is caused by the beep. I'm very curious about that, but maybe it's impossible to know. But
I'm curious about that too. I haven't figured out how to know that. Maybe there will come a time when fMRI is better, then that we'll be able to figure that out.
hmm,
Right now, I can't think of if I could have thought of a way to have figured that out, I'd be doing it.
okay,
But what I can say is that most people don't chunkify like that.
okay,
Or maybe I shouldn't say most people because I don't really I shouldn't be so bold as to presume that I've had a random sample, which I haven't. So what I should say is not everybody chunkify.
okay,
Some people chunkify.
okay. Good to know.
Whether that's as the result of the beep, so it could. I think it's quite possible that the beep is that the way the beep is processed in some people is different from the way the beep is processed in other people, and
Hmm.
it's not like the inner experience was different from those people. That the beep process, I'm pretty sure that's actually different from person to person, and
Hmm.
that would be interesting too. It's another way of looking at it, another way of looking at the problem. It's not that we're looking for, it's not that we're able to get at inner experience the way inner experience exists before the beep came. I don't have any qualms about pleading ignorance about that. That's just the way it is.
Right. Okay.
So I think well, I guess I give, so I see a stake as well.
Hmm.
Is this my beep? Am I supposed to be asking about this beep?
This is your beat.
Yeah. So what do I see?
So I also see a stake. Now this is actually on the video. So this is a real world seeing. I see a stake. It's a very deep red, and it has a ring of fat around it. So like a kind of thick off-white um, ring of fat around it.
And you take this to be what is out there on the screen. I am
I'm
visual.
not experiencing it as something on a screen.
So the question I'm trying to ask is whether this is in your imagination or out there. So,
Okay. Yes, it's actually out there on the screen in the real world.
okay. And 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 your understanding is that I'm seeing what's there to be seen. It's not like I put this ring of fat around a steak that didn't have a ring of fat or something like that.
Uh, yes, it's the fat is actually there on the thing, and I am making a note of the fat.
And by making a note of the fact, does that mean I'm visually aimed mostly at the fat? Or does that
Uh,
I'm thinking something alongside the seeing of the fat?
I'm thinking about the fat alongside of seeing it.
Okay. So let's stick with the seeing just a little bit more.
Mhm.
You said it was deep red or something like that. Is that part particularly present to you, or is that just the fact that the screen these pixels happen to be dark red?
It's just a fact of the matter that it's a deep red steak.
Okay. So I'm interested mostly in the fat, and somehow I am noticing that, and that noticing is more than just a perceptual aiming at the fat portion. And so tell me about that.
So I think that connects to the next part of the beep, which is the wondering. Uh, so should I go into that?
Okay.
Okay. So at the moment, while I was looking at the steak, I was wondering if um, Adam was going to um, explain that Marco Pierre White is wrong because people often take the ring of fat off of the steak. And so it can't be a valid judge of what's on the inside of the steak. And this doesn't actually make sense, but that's what my thought process was.
Okay. So how does that thought process come to you?
Okay. The thought process comes to me as um, as the idea of the steak getting chopped off, or the fat getting chopped off, specifically chopped off with a knife on a cutting board, and and um, the fact that once this occurs, it would be indistinguishable from a steak that never had fat around it.
And
So
and is all that present to you in words or in pictures or neither one? Or
so there might be, it's possible that the chopping off of the fat was present visually. Um, and I'm tempted to say it was like there was another picture somewhere of the chopping off of the fat happening. But I'm really not sure about that. What I can say is that the whole indistinguishable thing, and wondering if this was the point that Adam was going to make. I can say that that was not present in words, and that was not present visually.
so that's a quite specific and complex thought. Is that I'm going to say this, and that this is pretty complicated about what it is. It couldn't be this way because it's indistinguishable from that.
Mhm.
So somehow that relatively complex thought is present without either any visual imagery or words, or with possibly a visual imagery of the chopping off of fat, but none of the rest of the complexity. Is
Right.
that right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And I would say that is a textbook example of a fairly complicated unsymbolized thinking. That's what,
Okay.
if you ever read about what I say about unsymbolized thinking, well, that's it.
Okay.
Here's a guy who's saying he's thinking about something that's it's specific. Is Adam going to say this to Marco Pierre? And the this that he's going to say is specific. It's, sometimes the fat's there, and that's not,
Right.
can't,
Yes.
whatever. And yet there aren't any words that are conveying that specificity.
Yes.
That's what I call an unsymbolized thinking.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah, I sort of guessed that that was probably unsymbolized thinking, but I didn't say it just because I wanted to. I don't know. I didn't want
Right.
to
And I would,
poison the waters or whatever.
right. And I would say we haven't, this is our 11th sampling day, and I haven't tried to teach you, or we haven't tried to teach you to say unsymbolized thinking on day 2 or 3 or whatever. I think it's now, so descriptive experience sampling is not about trying to teach you a vocabulary that you should use.
Okay.
But we've been at this for a long time now, and I think you have a right to know, well, we've seen this kind of phenomenon before. We call it
Okay.
unsymbolized thinking. That doesn't mean that it's unsymbolized thinking for you, but I think we can talk about it this way without risk of Gabriel saying, well, I'm going to go looking for unsymbolized thinking.
Okay. I see.
I think we've been down the road far enough that is a relatively small risk.
Okay, that's good to know. There was another aspect of the beep as well, by the way.
Okay.
So there was all at the same time, at least I feel at the same time at the moment of the beep. I was also wondering if uh, so he had said is definitionally there was something that was going to come after that, and I was wondering if he was going to say uh, that the steak is definitionally the thing in the middle, not the fat around it, and thus uh, looking at the fat around it tells you nothing about the steak because the fat is not the steak. Now that wasn't there auditorially, um, and it sounds complicated when I say all those words, but it seems much more simple in my head. It also doesn't make sense logically, but
So the good news is that we don't care about that. But
mhm.
so does this seem like two separate sort of trains of thought?
Yes, it does. It does seem like two separate trains of thought that are sort of staggered after one another in their initiation. Uh, this wasn't in my experience, but what I can say is that the um, the first wondering, where I was wondering if he was wrong because people can take off the fat, that was initiated by his general incredulity about this claim that Marco Pierre White had made, not necessarily the words that came after, and the wondering if the middle of the steak is what the steak is and not the fat. The second wondering, the one that I just described, was a response to the words is definitionally.
And as far as your experience is concerned, do both of those seem like they're happening at the same time, even though one started before the other? So one starts and is continuing, and then the other one starts and is continuing, and for a while they overlap, and the beep happens then.
Yes.
And I think I understand what you're saying about it doesn't seem complicated, because I'm guessing it was sort of, this is not the same as that.
Right,
To
exactly.
put it, if you have to put it into words, it's sort of complicated about what this is and what that is or whatever.
Hmm.
But you know what you're talking about, this and that. So
Right.
then I think I'm good.
Okay.
Me too.
And I would say we have passed our hour, and today I don't have more than an hour, so I think we have to call it good here. And I would say you're doing great. I think this is totally interesting still.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
sometime I'm going to have the leisure. We're going to have the leisure talking about all this stuff and what happened, and whatever. And that it's going to be interesting.
Okay, got it.
But in the meantime, I'd say we ought to pick a time next week or something and do this again.
Okay, sounds good to me.